Now.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the community conversation with Generation Z. My name is Thaddeus P. II. I'm a member of the NAACP Education Committee, and I'm just honored to be hosting this conversation with my fellow Gen Zers and people from past generations as well. So to open this up, we're going to have some words of encouragement by Dr. Ron Whitaker, who is a professor at Cabrini University. So, Dr. Whitaker, take it away, sir.
Hey, Brother Thaddeus, NAACP, Norristown. First and foremost, let me just say thank you for allowing me to be in community with you this evening, even if it's just for a few minutes. I really appreciate the opportunity. I'm currently in Virginia as I'm speaking at a corporate function related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. But in talking to Brother Thaddeus and Brother Ernie, it's pretty much they charged me to share some words of encouragement for the younger generation. So one of the things that I want to offer, I kind of want to offer five pieces as we really situate where we are right now, and hopefully this will encourage you to keep on going on. Number one, let me say this. Trump is gone. Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States of America. But Trumpism remains, right? And you need to understand that just because one person exits, it does not mean that the ideology and the principles of that person also exit. So we have to look at, the intersection specifically of inequities that remain. Racism remains, white supremacy remains, the targeting of Black and brown communities remain. So therefore, we have to be vigilant. I think that leads to my second point that I would give to the younger generation, which is you have to understand, and again, it's related to my first point, that every system is perfectly designed to deliver the results it produces. Let me say that again. Every system is perfectly designed to deliver the results it produces. So therefore, it's imperative that this generation, that you are really going deeper with your education, right? So you can understand the root cause analysis of things that are currently being played out on the surface level. There's nothing new under the sun. So if you get into this fight thinking that this is just a new age piece, you missed it, right? So we have to understand the holistic implications. For some within this generation, you need to understand law, right? I'm hoping you go to law school. For others, it's all about economics. For others, it's about education. For others, we need to be on the front lines, of everything pertaining to medical. Even as we look at COVID-19 and the disparities with COVID-19, our communities have been most devastated. Then I want to give us the third point, right? If you have not seen this movie, Judas and the Black Messiah, it's imperative that you see it. But not only stop with the movie, after that, you need to do your research on Fred Hampton. One of the most brilliant brothers that I believe was about to take off and do some things like never before. Unfortunately, he was assassinated at the age of 21. So if I back it up, and this has been documented, right? This has been documented, Brother Chris and Brother Ernie, that this is what the FBI said, that we have to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah, right? They saw so much power in him, Thaddeus, that they said, you know what, this brother needs to be in the grave. So what we need right now, we just don't need one individual that's on the front lines by themselves. We need a whole rise of Black messiahs in urban, suburban, public, private, all across this nation, right? So it's time for this generation to understand that, you know what, you got this, right? The baton is being handed off, but, as it's being handed off, just don't stay on the sidelines and wait for somebody to actually do something. We all have to rise up, because no longer can we have what has happened in previous generations. Did they take out Medgar Evers? They take out Malcolm X. They take out Dr. King. They take out Fred Hampton. So many others in between. These nameless individuals that have also been on the front lines, they've silenced them, and the movement has stopped. So this generation, we need to understand that, we need a lot of folk just rising up. Then here's another piece I want to offer. And Brother Chris, let me say this, right? Because I think this is important. When we're engaging in this fight, I need this generation to understand we have to stop critiquing one another, in regards to into the role that we play, right? Because what happens oftentimes, and again, I love Gen Z, I really do. I'm with you. Any support that you need moving forward, I'm an email away. But what happens, we feel as though if you're not the one on, in the streets and marching, that you ain't real, right? And that's not the case, right? You got to understand strategy with this thing, right? Here's another movie I want to give everyone, The Spook Who Sat, near the door, right? You got to understand strategy, that sometimes you switch lanes. But just because you switch lanes, it does not mean that you're not real, right? What happens is when you switch lanes, now you're operating within your area of influence, right? So for example, I'm here down in Virginia speaking at a corporate conference, and I'm here with folk, CEOs, VPs, folk that's making $500,000, $750,000, and they look just like us, right? Now they're not going to be on the front lines. I'm gonna tell you that. They're not going to be marching. They're not going to be out there on the front lines in the street, but it does not mean that they're not real. Because here's the thing, many of them could write a check for $50,000, right? That supports the movement. They don't want no publicity out of this thing. They don't want you to tweet them, but that's their way of saying, right now, I can do the economics thing while you're doing this thing, right? So we have to look at this from a multiple lane perspective. It's not an either or, but it's a both and we got to respect the lanes that people are in. So I want your generation to understand that just because someone may not be out there in the streets with you, it does not mean we're not with you, right? It just means that, okay, perhaps we're operating from this space. I want to end with this, and that is, this is just not a moment where we're hashtagging. This is not just a moment where we're doing all this stuff on social media. This is not just a moment where we're wearing masks with BLM. But you need to understand this is a moment that will determine if we're going to continue to live, right? And we all need to understand that this is about life or death. Don't get it twisted that just because Trump is gone and just because, folk are saying, okay, we want to do diversity initiatives. No, this is still about if we're going to live. Because one of the things that if history teaches us anything, is that for a moment, there's going to be progress, but then after that, white supremacy is going to find different and new and creative ways to try to oppress us, right? So we all have to understand the fierce urgency of now. We all have to understand that this moment, we can no longer go back. We can no longer be on the sidelines. There's some things in-house we need to clean up. There's too much of a divide in-house, but we got to come together with the strategy, and we need to develop an infrastructure so that we're going to be able to have a conversation like this, hopefully in 40 years, talking about it from a different perspective. Now, Thaddeus, you're switching lanes with Brother Ernie, and we got some other folk that's in your seat now, and what we're talking about is economics in terms of how we're going to build our own kingdoms, how we're going to build our own communities. That's the conversation I want to have. I don't want to be having a conversation around, pretty much the same old, that they're killing us, and they're targeting our communities. And the only way that that's going to change is that we got to understand the fierce urgency of now. Once again, I appreciate the moment just to be able to share. My apologies for being rapid speed. As mentioned, I have other commitments down here in Virginia, but much love to you, much love to everybody on the line. And, keep me in mind as we think about the next steps. I'll be sharing some information with this group in the weeks to come about a event that I have going on. And once again, I'm appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr. Ron Whitaker, for your charge. We definitely heard you, and we're definitely going to operate in action. So again, thank you for taking the time out to just speak to our generation and really charge us to action. We really appreciate it. So right now I want to
much love, everyone.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Peace.
I want to introduce our panelists for tonight. They all jumped on, so thank you guys for taking the time to be on the panel tonight. We have Anania Jones, who's a legend in her own right. She really needs no introduction. We all know her. She was doing a lot of activism work, especially during the summer. Really inspired me. She's a student at Westchester. We have Katie Griffin, who's really awesome as well. She's a 11th grader at Northstown High School, which is amazing. Then we got my brother Dion Allen. You might hear him on Hot 107.9. It's 12 a.m. to 3 p.m., I believe. So definitely really appreciative of all he does for the community and representing us well. Right now, I want to share a photo to really show everyone that this is not new. Activism in our communities is not new, but we really stand on the shoulders of giants that have came before us. Can everybody see this photo? Yes. All right, cool. So I want
Yes.
Mr. Hadrick to really, Mr. Ernie Hadrick, a huge person in the community, to really kind of explain the significance of these two photos and why it really matters. So, Mr. Hadrick.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to thank Mr. Davis, our committee chair, and Thaddeus, our emerging leader, for all that they've done for this Black History Month. I think it's been a little different, and I appreciate what everybody on the committee has done. My task tonight is just to share the significance of this photo and what it means across generations and the resilience of our people. Up in the top, you're going to see a protest that was made in 1963 at the courthouse, which is the same courthouse. We had another protest rally in 2001 for Martin Luther King Day. At the top, these individuals, white, black, clergy, regular citizens, they marched from the municipal building, as did this generation did from Borough Hall, at different locations. And they marched to this was an NAACP-led event, and they marched to the courthouse, and they protest the lack of voting rights in Mississippi and Alabama in 1963. And to look back at that and think about the fact that there's still suppression and all these things that exist today, you know, we were fighting for a long time. It's just not been yesterday. So I think, you know, that should be important to us to know that we're on the back of some great things that happened in the past, and they're going to lead us into the future. And the other picture was a fantastic rally march that our young people and our older had on Martin Luther King Day. And it was a protest about the violence and the things that have been going on in our country, and they've been more visible lately with technology, with the fact that now we have these phones that take pictures and all that. And I would just like to say, in closing, that there's so much power in us working together, us with a little bit of wisdom, and not the ability to run too fast, but a little bit of wisdom. And Thaddeus has told us that, you know, with the energy of the youth of the Generation Z and the wisdom of older folks who can't get out and walk fast or anything. I was late for the rally because I got there slow with my bad legs. But I appreciate all that you guys are doing, and I hope that we can all work together until we make our move on to see the Father. And I appreciate everything everybody's doing, and just be faithful, and it's going to be good. It's going to be good. It's going to be better than yesterday with the enthusiasm that we have now. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hadrick. You've been a huge mentor to me, so I appreciate you, and I'm glad that we're, you know, working together. So definitely grateful for your wisdom. So I want to get right into this discussion. So as I said, we have our panelists on the line. So I want to open up with the first question, and the first question is, what does resiliency mean to you? So panelists, you can go. It doesn't really matter what order. But yeah, that's the question. What does resiliency mean to you?
I can start.
Oh, please do. Yeah, you good.
You can hear me? I'm good?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, firstly, thank you, Thaddeus, for having me in the NAACP. I appreciate being here. But to me, resiliency really means obviously being able to persevere through, you know, hardships, but definitely also to maintain myself and my mental health, and also hope. I feel like that's the biggest thing, you know, maintaining your hope and finding consistent sources of hope to keep you going and to keep you, you know, moving to do the work that you want to do.
Great answer. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other panelists want to go?
I'll go. I want to thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Everybody, hello, how are you doing? Resiliency to me, obviously it's about the bounce back. I think to pitch on to what Anaya said, she said hope. Faith is a word I would use as well. It's just something to have that underlying motivation to keep on going. Even though you get knocked back down 9 times, you got to get up 10. Just find that motivation of whatever it is, you know, just keep going.
100%. Katie, you want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I agree with what everyone said. Resiliency really is about the bounce back, and not only to be able to look at a situation and learn from it, it's to be able to have that and see that situation and to carry on and to make you stronger, especially when it comes to, you know, race in the Black community. Oftentimes we see so many situations where we're brought down, and I think it's so amazing that I've learned, and so many other people have learned, especially in Gen Z, I see it often. We've learned to not only learn from what happens to us and the racist comments that we get and the discrimination we get, it's also great that we've learned that we can take that and motivate it and take it as motivation to move forward, to keep trying to better ourselves. So
Great answers all around. I also want to just like let everybody know, granted this is a panel discussion, but if you also have anything to add, please feel free to unmute yourself and say it. Like I don't want people to just feel like, you know, you guys are just on and just hear us talk. Like this is a community conversation. We want everybody to add in their perspective. So if you have anything else to add about that question, please feel free to just say it. You know what I mean? If you have the freedom to say what you feel resiliency means to you, because it means something different to all of us. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I want to move on to the next question, and that question is, what makes our generation so resilient?
I can start again. That's fine.
That's cool. That's cool. That's cool.
So I think what makes our generation so resilient is that we are really young. So it's kind of like for us, that hope thing that I was just talking about, we haven't really seen, while there's a lot, you know, to disillusion us, we haven't really seen as much as we could have seen to feel like, okay, well, this is just how it is. Because I've only been here for 19 years. So I'm able to, you know, find so many sources of hope and so few sources of just being resigned, because I haven't seen that much. So it's like people who have been doing this for their whole life have seen so many times, you know, them being told no, or them seeing their efforts not work. And I feel like when you see that type of stuff, it's easy to get disillusioned and discouraged. But I feel like because we're so young, we're able to say, okay, this is how it's going to be. And nobody told me no before, so why can't it be that way? So I think that's what makes us really resilient, is that we have so much future. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I just gotta say, wow. I mean, just listening to you folks speak is just doing so much for me right now. You know, the insight and based on real life experience. I just wanted to say, wow, you know, and appreciate you.
Nah, thank you, Mr. Davis. Now we appreciate you and your leadership on this education committee. This has definitely been a long planning process, but I'm glad that this event is happening. Shout out to Judge Gregory Scott that just got on the call as well. Appreciate you, Judge, for taking the time out and being with us tonight. So I wanna ask Dion, bro, like what do you think? Why is our generation so resilient? Why do we bounce back so much?
I was just about to hop on there. Mr. Davis, what's going on? Man, I love you, dude. Judge Gregory Scott, what's going on? Ernie Hadrick. These are guys that I've all ran across all through Norristown. A little bit about myself. I was born November 11th, 1996. So I would like to claim myself as like the last of the millennials, but there's a little discussion nowadays, 94, 95 is the cutoff. So if anything, I'm at the top of the Gen Z. So I will say for me personally, I'm very resilient, persevere. We're very strong. We don't take no for an answer. I feel as though, and I don't even want to use the term whistleblower, but we are just morally just people and we want just things to be right, you know? So, just going day in and day out, doing the right thing from what I see and the good people around me, just trying to make change in the community, do what we have to do, whether it be, hosting events, hosting panel discussions like you're doing now. I honestly, I'm looking through this audience like it's a lot of people in here. I didn't expect all these people to be here. So, just being in this room right now, I don't know who I'm talking to. Somebody could hit me up after this and present opportunity to me, and then we can collab and do something good for the community all through you, bro. So, you younger than me. I'm 24. So I'm not holding this stuff. You are. So, kudos to you, man.
Appreciate it, bro. Any other panelists want to tackle that question? I think that question is important because, like, when I look at, how we go through adversity and stuff like that, like we don't quit. Like there's just something about our generation that's just like, no, like we see the obstacles, we see it in front of us, but like none of that none of that phases us. Like we go for it. So like, why do y'all think that is?
Another point I want to make, to speak really roughly or really briefly on the police brutality situation. So from the generation prior to us, we remember the name Rodney King. There are probably another couple of names that obviously they remember. They can probably pick out a handful. But from this generation alone, I mean, it's sad to say we can count on 10 hands. I mean, 2 to 10 hands. How many names, starting with, from what I remember, Trayvon Martin, and then on, that this will be, so I feel like the resiliency comes is like, we're going to keep on, jamming this information in until, we finally get it. And hopefully
Yeah, you made a great point, Dion, because as many of you know, 2/26/2012 was the year that Trayvon Martin got killed. And that was a huge eye opener for me. I was 12, about to be 13 years old. And it really was an eye opener for me to really see like, oh, something is really wrong in America when it comes to race. Granted, you read about the civil rights movement and things like that, but that was the first time I actually noticed it happening in my lifetime. So thank you for bringing that up, Dion, because that, for a lot of us, that was the start of this whole, oh, this is wrong, was Trayvon.
I was a sophomore in high school, so 10th grade, was still, very much impressionable as to what was going on, and that was at a time where we were watching the news, and before homeroom, before the Pledge of Allegiance, they would have the entertainment news on. So to see that, and that was broadcasted for not only that day, but for weeks on end. So up until the acquittal and everything, it was just a huge shockwave throughout the.
Definitely. Oh, go ahead, Katie. You good?
I definitely want to add on to the question. I think I consider myself, I guess, part of the younger side of Gen Z because I'm in 11th grade. I'm 17. But I think one of the biggest things about why I believe that our generation is so resilient is definitely because of how unified we are. And I never really noticed it really until the whole George Floyd event blew up all over the media, the news. And everyone saw it and everyone was in shock. But I did not expect the response, how big the response was. I thought it was just going to be, oh, another unfortunate, news story. Everyone's going to move on with their lives. And the fact that it blew up so big just really, it honestly amazed me just to see how many people this one single event affected. And another thing to add on top of that is that I, at my young age, I haven't really experienced any kind of, I guess, direct racism or anything like that. I'm grateful that I can say that. But there are times and situations where I have been taken advantage of because of my race. And I've been upset over it. I've had situations where that's happened to me and I've cried over it. And the amount of people who have brought me back up inspired me to keep going. The amount of people who had my back because of from what happened was also so amazingly inspiring. And that's what I think is so amazing about Gen Z. It's just how everyone has each other's backs, everyone understands, and it's really amazing.
Nah, that was brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. Great answer. But you're right. Gen Z, we have each other's backs. We're a huge family. We realize that, nothing's really going to happen. No change is really going to happen unless we unite together. And I think that's one thing that we understand offhand. We got to have each other's backs. We have to understand that we may have differences, but we all ultimately want the same thing. We want to create a better world for our children and our children's children. So thank you for bringing that up. Another question is, why is it important for us as young people to seek wisdom out from past generations? One thing that, I've noticed is sometimes we may feel like we have the answers. It's like, all right, we young, we got the energy, boom. We don't need the old heads. You feel what I'm saying? Like, we don't need y'all. Like, y'all are like antiquated, y'all are done. But I realize that's not the case. While I have a Mr. Hadrick, while I have a Mr. Chris Davis still around, I need to be learning from them. I need to be asking them questions because they've been around, they've seen things I haven't seen, they've experienced things that I haven't experienced. So why is it important for us as young people to utilize the wisdom of past generations and actually be humble enough to seek that out?
History repeats itself. Simple and plain. I'll say something very briefly. Got this from my grandfather. I think he told me this before I turned 21. He said, "Don't let your inherited anger dethrone you from your kingdom." And I know what it means, but when he first told me that, I was like, inherited anger? What do you mean? And I never asked him. I just took it and ran with it. So I'm still like, trotting and teetling on like what about life, like, why when I get angry, like it's inherited. So I think about different situations from my father, from my grandfather. Yes, he was 21. Yes, he was 18 at a point in time. He may not have been able to get in the club or do whatever the cool kids were doing. And maybe he felt bad about it, as I did. Very impressionable at a high school age. You see the guys with all the girls or the guys with the cars and stuff, and you get impressionable, you get jealous, and these emotions have been felt before from people in our bloodline and our ancestors. So it's important to, be able to be like, "Hey dad," or "Hey grandpop," or "Hey unc, I'm feeling this way, this thing happened." And he was just like, "Hey man, that happened to me back in '85. You don't even know." And he just pitched it to you and you was like, okay, it might pan out that way, it may not. You're ultimately in charge of your own story, your own goal. God's already written it for you, you just follow it through. But to have that help and that, guidance from someone older who's been through it before, it is
I can follow up. So for me personally, I think it's really important to listen to older generations, because I personally gained so much inspiration from older generations, and not necessarily from what they're doing now, but from what they've done in the past. Because there was a time when, millennials or the baby boomers or whatever, they were our age, and they was doing a lot of stuff too. When you look at the Black Panther Party, the young people that made up that party. And then Fred Hampton was 21 when he died, 19 when he rose to the ranks of leadership in the Black Panther Party. It's kind of like, they were doing a lot of stuff when they were young too, and even as they got older. So personally, I find it really inspiring to see what they have done in the path that they have laid out for me. And yeah, I do want to do things differently because, you know, where we are today, we still have a lot more work to do. But I personally find it really inspiring. And it's also really educational to hear about people like Fred Hampton, who was so for his community that he took an ice cream truck to give out to his community, to give ice cream to the kids on his block, or to, you know, form a breakfast program. Like those things that we still need today, we can learn so much from older people just by listening, because there's a lot of things that we need today that, you know, we needed back then and we still don't have, but they might have had, you know, they did a lot too. At the same time, now I do think it's really important to ask the question, why don't young people feel the need to listen to old people, or why do younger people, you know, put off the words of older people sometimes? And I feel like it's because once you get, or just from my experience from the older people that I've talked to, I feel like a lot of times, and maybe some of the older people on the call can correct me if I'm wrong, but once you get older, it's kind of like, I don't know, I've just heard so much disillusion from older people, and kind of like, this is the way it is. It's been this way my entire life. This is the way it will always be. And I just find so much issue with that mindset, just because, you know, things haven't always been this way. Things have been this way for the years that you have been alive, but we have been here for so long. We were here, we were in Africa before we were in America, and how we were living there. There's so many different ways to live. So I just feel like a lot of time older people can be even a little bit discouraging to younger people, which causes us to feel like, well, I'm not going to listen to you because you think it's this way, and I know it doesn't have to be.
Great point.
Hey guys, good evening, y'all. I wanted to touch on this too. This one actually hits home because where would any of us be without mentors? You know, Mr. Davis, Mr. Hadrick, two people on the call. Even my generation, you know, I'm one of the oldest millennials. Mr. Davis ran a program called Norristown Area Fight Against Drugs, and he taught young people how to work the school store and sell merchandise. Mr. Hadrick was a huge track coach, guidance counselor for many of us. So they not only taught us how to succeed in life, but they also taught us how to give back and pass it down. So we work to become better mentors every day from people like, you know, Mr. Davis, Mr. Hadrick, Ms. Myers. And you know, just to touch on that, I think you guys, what you're doing now, it's a motivation to us too. So to be on this call on a Friday night is really inspiring, because there are times like Ms. Jones said, that we get tired of the same old, you know, whether it's in the institution, whether it's in the politics. We all know that, oh, this is just how it goes. But the fact that you guys are fighters, your generation, you know, y'all not afraid to speak up. Y'all not afraid to speak out. It does put some motivation in some of your older peers like myself. So Thaddeus, thank y'all for doing this.
No, we appreciate you joining, Councilman Jones. Anybody else have anything to add? Like I said, feel free. Oh, shout out to my sister from Bowie State University that just jumped on. What's up, Armani? Love you, sis.
Hey.
Shout out to Bowie State University in the house. Yeah, the greatest HBC
Yes, you.
in the world. In the world. Appreciate you joining. Anybody else have anything to add to that question?
I just wanted to say, yeah, it's important learning from our elderly. I mean, even as my age now, I'm hanging out with a lady soon to be in June, 100 years old. I mean, she has all her wits, her stories. You know, they continue to be inspirational and motivational. You know, which I say too goes even back to my civil rights heroes and sheroes, who I gleaned from, how they made their way through society, how they fought, how they organized, how they protest, looking back and gleaming that wisdom. So it's been fun to tap in and to share into the young people who I have met and had the pleasure of watching and grow up and amazed by. Mr. like Dion here and talking right now, and you, Thaddeus, and I haven't had the pleasure to meet my other young sisters here, and I hope I do so in the future. But the synergy with old and new coming together is and help take this forward. I'm excited.
Like to say that I like to say, answer the phone, my wife. Answer the phone.
And Judge Greg Scott, while I'm on here too, I mean, watching you have grown up. I know you all out of this league now, but man, I'm glad for the connection, older generations and younger generations.
I just think I can say that, it's a lot of talk about the younger generation, listening to the older generation. And that's part of it, but working with young people, all my life, some of us need to listen, not dismiss, because that's what we've done a long time. We get old, we don't want to hear what they got to say. We don't want to hear what they got to say. And that's like the biggest mistake for us to make, because it's so much, it was always so much that they didn't want us to say, and then the cycle repeats itself. So that's one thing, when we're doing this, we got to share with us old folks, hey, you got to listen up or you're going to miss it. You got to listen up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What's up, Jody?
What's up?
Another accomplished scholar and a North Iron High School grad. Shout out to you.
Thank you. So I would just like to add that it is definitely important for us to listen to the older generations, but I think the misunderstanding and the miscommunication is in the language. And I feel like in general, as human beings, if we're not being understood by somebody or a certain thing, then we tend to disengage from it. And sometimes that can be from the language that we use. Even in this era right now, the way we talk, the language that we speak, language not meaning English or Spanish, but the way we interpret things. For example, in the time of Alexander Hamilton, he had a certain language that he used to speak to generations. In MLK, he had a certain language that he used to speak to people to help them to be motivated to do things. So I feel like that language is missing, and I feel like a part of that is social media, because we've become so accustomed to posting pictures online. Oh, we're here, let's come, and then we're just shouting and we're doing stuff, and we're not really speaking a language that can be understood to the older generation for them to really understand it. And I feel like that is very important to understand, that we need to be speaking a certain language so that they can understand and help us.
Brilliant point. Thank you. Thank you for that insight, Jody. For real. Thank you. That was an awesome point. Anybody else want to add anything before we move on to the next question?
Dad, real quick, can I just say,
Yeah,
amazing
please do.
job. I can't not say that about you guys, but I love when I heard Miss Jones and all of you guys say, like, we don't take no for an answer. Or I even heard Miss Jones said, I've never heard the word no. And if you guys start doing this work, you're going to hear the word no. I mean, Mr. Hadrick, Miss Platts, our statesmen on the call, they've heard no a lot. I've heard no a lot trying to do this work, everybody else. And you just can't listen. And we need you now, because, how you said the older generation, some of us get disillusioned because we do hear that no. We are the 3 people at the rally. We are the 1 person holding the sign. And now that we have you guys and you're so used to these crowds, it's such a great momentum. So we really need you guys, like Mr. Hadrick said, to breathe life back into it. Because it can be a long, hard day when you do this for so many years and not many people are on your side. It's, and I know that some of the older people know that much more than I do. So I love how this is respecting what they did before us, and now you guys are inspiring us. But like, you're going to hear that no, you're going to hear that's too hard, or no one's going to listen, or that's not going to make money, or you don't have the money to do it. And that enthusiasm that you guys bring, everyone on this call who we're looking at have been doing this in town for many years. And I'm just so glad to see that you guys are up for the challenge, because it's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah, to kind of respond to that, something that I've noticed is, so I'm just going to use the whole police as an example, but in regards to reform or defund or abolish, when I have these discussions with older people, and sometimes it's people generally, a lot of the time the discussion goes back to reform, which, obviously we can use reform. But when I bring up the question of abolish, it becomes well, what is that going to look like? How are we going to survive without police, et cetera, et cetera? And the thing that I find so often is that, generally people lack imagination. So it's kind of like, I feel like once you're, and I could be wrong again, I'm 19 years old, but I feel like when older people, you have been living with police for so long, your entire life, that it becomes so difficult to imagine a life without police. And I feel like that's where young people are really, we have so much potential if we act now and continue being resilient and continue demanding now, like we're not gonna wait. I think that there's a lot of potential, because I don't wanna ever lose the imagination that I have. Because I feel like once you get to a certain age, I don't even wanna say get to a certain age, but there's something that happens. I've seen it happen in so many people where it's kind of like we can't imagine a world without police. And I get so baffled by that, because I can imagine like 20 different worlds without police. So it's like, I feel like there's a disconnect in that too. And I really want to know where that comes from. But I feel like there's a lot of potential, like, you were just saying, there's so much potential that we have to do these things, because we are so now, we don't. When we hear the word no, it's kind of like we ignore it, because what does your no really mean to me? So I think that's something beautiful, and I want us to keep acting on that. But I do get scared sometimes, because the Black Panther Party, they were young too, and we don't have them anymore. And yes, that was part of the government too, but I don't want us to lose our fire. I don't want us to lose none of that so many organizations used to have.
Yes, and if I could add, Albert Einstein actually said imagination is better than knowledge, because knowledge is so limited. So I definitely understand why it is important to have imagination. And it is definitely a very important aspect in bringing the world forward, because if people didn't imagine, then we wouldn't have a lot of the things that we have now. But also, in keeping with that idea, I also understand why people are like, how do we do it? Because it is one thing when you're talking about something and you're inquiring about something, but when the other side is saying, how do we do it, then it's important to not like disregard their opinions, because people think very differently, and their requirements may be really genuine. Because when I sit down and I try to write policy, it is very hard. It is extremely difficult to come up with ways to see how we can survive without police officers. And me personally, I'm not jaded, and I do have a big imagination, but I try to mix it with being realistic. And realistically, writing policies, when we talk to these politicians about writing policies, getting funding, it is extremely difficult, because you have to have majority votes on certain things, and that goes back to speaking a language to the people so that they can come together. So yeah, I definitely agree with not being jaded and having a big imagination, but we also have to focus on doing things concretely.
Amen
Awesome.
to everything.
Hey,
Awesome points. Awesome
I'm about
points.
to jump up and down here, Miss Jody. Girl.
Yes, sir. What's up? What's up, Mr. Hazard?
So I can speak briefly. One thing I know Ms. Jones spoke about police. And Ms. Jones, if you can answer this for me, do you know how police started? Do you know that? Just a question for you.
I believe I do.
What is that?
So from my understanding, police started in South Carolina, and it was basically it was kind of like a slave catching initiative.
Slave patrol. Yep, slave patrol. So I say that to say, when you talk about police and the history of them and why it's so hard for people to not believe it sometimes, because why it was instilled, right, and installed into this country. I do think we need to defund in certain ways and move the money in different, areas, as you mentioned, to make a change that will be lasting and effective. But I just wanted to say that to you, and I'm glad you know that, because most young people don't know, and they just say stuff, and I'm proud of you for knowing your history at only 19, on that, because many won't dig into that. 3 things that I want to leave with you all. Generation Z, I do believe that, your generation does have a powerful voice, and I think you learned it through social media, because you saw the effects of it and how it can change things. And 3 things that I think that will affect change here in Norristown. If you stick to these, and this is just my own opinion, accountability to each other. Don't let anybody slack off. I think it's very important. I think if you look each other in the eye and you say these things in front of us tonight, it sounds good, but it's more important to hold each other accountable. SMART goals. I think often, and I'm just going to be honest, my father's one of the elders, but I think some of their goals before were just moral goals. They weren't SMART goals. And if you know what SMART goals are, specific, measurable,
attainable, realistic, and time sensitive. I think you need to really make goals that can make sense. You know, yes, we had to fight for certain things in blacks and whites, but if we put sometimes measurable outcomes to the goals, you have a better chance of attaining that, and you'll make sure that will happen. And lastly, be authentic. You know, often people in this community will lose our soul to stuff, politics, power, crumbs in the community. And I think it's important that you all hold each other to being authentic and follow through, because it's very, very easy to, you know, want to help so hard that you forget who you are and forget who you need to help. You know, and that's my 3 things that I think in Generation Z, you all will take this community hopefully to a different level. I'm proud of you all for having this discussion on a Friday night. I know we're still in quarantine, but it's still amazing to see this happen. But as I said again, accountability, SMART goals, and be authentic, and you'll make things come to fruition that many have never had the opportunity to do.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Hardrick. As you know, like, you've been one of my mentors as well. You know what I'm saying? Really helping me become the man I've become. So thank you for that wisdom. So I want to move on to the next question. And that question is, what are some ways that we can remain resilient through difficulty? Because as Ms. Myers said earlier, we are going to hear a no every now and again. So what are some ways that we can keep pushing through those difficulties? Now, and I want to hear from both the older generation and the younger generation on this question, because I think that we all have some insight to really add to this particular question. So again, the question is, what are some ways that we can remain resilient through difficulty?
I'll go because I didn't get a chance to speak because I came in late, but this is a perfect question because I was actually watching something the other day about how there's 4 pillars of activism, and there's agitation, so going out in the streets and protesting and just agitating the oppressive systems, education, where we're educating our brothers and sisters, we're going out and we're educating people on Black history, educating people on activism. The other one was litigation. So litigation, obviously, that's, taking it to the courts, and then also the last one is legislation, which obviously you want to advocate for bills and just anything that could be passed for, not just for reform, but just for anything that could rectify all the things that have been done wrong. So those are just like the 4 things I believe is important for our generation to continue with the momentum.
One 100%. Appreciate that answer, Armani.
HBCU, right?
Yes, sir. That's
HBCU,
Bowie
right?
State right there, Mr.
Yes,
Hadrick.
sir.
Bowie?
Yes, sir.
HBCU.
That's Bowie State
Yes,
right
sir.
there. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
HBCU.
You
You
know.
learn those things when you go to those type of universities and colleges.
So I think
Absolutely.
we
Shout
go
out to
back
Lincoln University as well,
the first
Jody.
beginning, the first. Thank you. I would like to
Shout out
say
to Lincoln
Aggie
University.
Pride.
Shout out to
Aggie
NCAT
Pride.
too. I'm about
Aggie
to say we
Pride.
got a lot of HBCU love on here, so you can't forget nobody. You can't leave nobody out. But again, Armani, thank you for that answer. That's really true. Thank you for breaking that down. That really helped. Anybody else want to add into the question?
Hello, I'll go. I think some of the ways that we could, that people, not just the youth, but people in general, can stay resilient is by staying focused, understanding what it is you're trying to accomplish, and not wavering from that. Even though, excuse me, you understand that life has obstacles, and you're going to get hurt, told no, and you're going to be disappointed. And those things it's okay to be disappointed, but sometimes we just have to regroup. And I think staying focused and keeping faith in what you want your final outcome to be, what you want your legacy to be about, and standing on that, not being deterred, even when obstacles are all around you, and you may be having people may not understand. Well, that doesn't make sense, or this doesn't make sense. But when you know something within yourself, you have to really hold true to that, even if it's not what's popular. You gotta be able to go against what's popular and stand on what you believe. And I think that's one of the ways you be able to stay resilient. And also always be willing to learn, not to think you know everything, because we can always learn from someone else, keeping an open mind and growing with the times, not staying in your own mindset of things, but being able to elevate yourself, always recreating yourself, rebuilding yourself. I think that's how we stay resilient.
And another way that we stay resilient is through self-care, by taking care of ourselves so that we can manage emotions, that we can manage stress, and we can manage during the struggle. Drinking those things, eating those things, exercising, working out, taking mental health breaks, learning how to meditate, breathe properly, just eat and live well is part of our resiliency.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ms. Javon. Katie, you were going to say something?
Yes, I wanted to add on to the knowledge aspect of it. I definitely think that being educated on what you're standing up for is very important, because I know I see this often in especially the younger side of Gen Z, and I have been in this situation before where we see something on the media and we don't know the full story of it depending on the situation. And we go into trying to advocate for whatever what we're advocating for without having the full knowledge of it, without getting the background information. And it does not only make us ignorant in a way, but also just, I guess, it doesn't feel like we really, that lack of understanding makes it so that, sorry, I'm kind of blanking here, but I think that, before you go and you fight for something and you advocate for something, I think it's very, very important to educate yourself on it beforehand. So I think that's very important.
Yes. Thank you.
I'll say something really quickly to add on to what I was listening to what Mr. Hadrick said about SMART goals. Simply place that are realistic with resiliency, because you're going to hear a lot of those. I done heard a lot of those coming from point A to point B. I learned something today too. I didn't know where police started from. And Ms. Jones is 19 and she knew that. I went to a PWI, so that's different. They didn't teach me, they probably robbed me. But long story short, it's good that I was able to, learn that, take that information. And then, because a little bit of me just was like, well, wow, that's crazy. Slave catching, that's where it started from. But to take that information and to, as Ms. Yvonne said, know how to hold those or hone those emotions, and then, be able to make a unbiased push into the world, like, okay, this is where it started from, but we can go here now, and I think it's really important to just stay resilient after all the no's and trying to get litigation into the court law and it being neglected, and then after all the acquittals and just after the persistence, keep persisting, and just dejection after rejection, we can't let up. That's basically what I'm getting at.
Yes, and if I could add, community is very important. Being around people who have the same mindset that you have and who are willing to put in the work that you're willing to put in. And also, I think we do have to be careful when we try to abolish things because of their history, and because even Planned Parenthood, the history behind Planned Parenthood isn't good, but yet it's doing good today. So I think abolishing things because of the history, we have to be very careful about it, because everything can be turned into good. Yeah.
I have a quick question. It's a little off topic. This is for Mr. Hadrick. Is he still on here? Mr. Hadrick?
There's two.
Yeah,
the younger Mr. Hadrick. I'm sorry. The younger
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. And one
quick question.
Yeah.
You were talking about holding. Yes, sir.
Don't don't question yourself because of the PWI, and I know you don't, but always remember that's just a small thing. But I heard about you from my father and your resilience. So there's still, we say that for the pride and for the historical aspect, and to make sure that HBCUs never die.
Yes, sir.
But you're still setting a trend as a Black male at Cabrini University, which you went to. I know my history, you know what I mean? And what you've done there was important. So don't ever get it twisted. And their mission at Cabrini is sometimes better than some HBCUs that talks about social justice. So
definitely,
it's deeper than just saying HBCU. But go ahead with your question.
For sure. I wanted to be in on that though. But my question to you was, I was hearing you talk about accountability. Now this is a little off topic, but it does pertain to, you know, the generation that is at hand. So we have the good, and then we also have the bad. We have the people who are, you know, easily impressionable at a very young age in their high school careers, 9th, 10th grade, which I was, and I could have easily went down left street and it could have been a whole, you know what I'm saying? So we just had two very recent incidents where, you know, there was a shooting at the town alley now, which we used to call Pacifica lanes. Everybody used to go bowling there. There was a shooting there. The guy's been, you know, he's arrested now. He turned himself in. And then there was another incident where the top of the year, January 3rd, my friend lost her life to gun violence. The person who I think was charged is now released and out on and just out walking the street. So where do we hold these people accountable? How does accountability set into there? Where do we set those examples at? Not necessarily just saying we're targeting him, jacking him up like, yo, dude, you better, but what is our message to Norristown?
Well, I think accountability starts as close to home, right? Like you can't always go outside. Like often we want to say like, you know, I don't know, for example, people got mad when the guy Joe Gale said, you know, Black Lives Matter was a I don't know, terror, whatever, right? What's that mean, right? When we're not teaching our kids how to even pronounce the word Joseph Gale, right? Accountability and education. So we get all worried about going to his house.
I was about to say, but we find his address though. We'll pull up there.
We pull up, but then we can't teach kids how to even read the word address or you know what I'm saying? And we hold positions of power where we can make those changes. So that's accountability, right? When you have accountability with youngins who have those type of acts, you know, sometimes it goes beyond our control when things like that happen. And your accountability is to yourself to say, I want to make sure that someone else doesn't fall down that path. You know, you get what I'm saying? Like I think that's the most you can do, because once it gets beyond our hands in the community and in a legal hands, I think you have to allow that to just go where it is and take care of that. You know what I mean? And granted, I don't think you ever turn your back on people. You know, you try your best. You got to separate yourself sometimes, because not everybody's going to be on the same wavelength, right? And sometimes that also turns into accountability when people see like, dang, Deion's only going this way. You know what I mean? I can't even pull him where I want him to go. That sets a tone of accountability, and it sets the lead by example, the old words, right? So sometimes you'll have more influence if you tend to do that, you know, than just trying to say, well, why don't you do just, you know what, I'm gonna sever myself, separate, and do what I think is right. And if somebody follows, they follow. If not, they don't. You know, it's hard, man, because, you know, in a small community like this, you know, I use two words and I say related and dated, right? Everybody's either related or they dated, right? And because of that, people are scared to talk about truths and facts. And until we get to the point where we can say, put the facts on the table, right? That's not, everything will stay the same, right? We'll have that same, you know, at the end of the day, you're Allen, I went to school at Allen's, I believe Bates, right? You're related to the Bates. It's all connected. So it's gonna be hard sometimes. It's gonna be like, can I say this because of, sooner or later, the way we move it forward, as I said, with accountability, right, is to put it out there and say, these are the facts. How can we help? If we get worried because it's cousin or like me and my father, and I'll be transparent, we had a tough conversations this last week, tearful conversations, but about accountability and trying to make things different, right? So I said to say, like, it's at a point where you got to realize how close. If you're not so close to certain situations, the accountability might have to look different. But if you're close enough, you got to bring it to the best way you can. And that's, to me, that's the only way it's going to make a difference, you know? But we have to hold people accountable. Like if we know there's not enough youth programs for kids and things are going in an array direction,
Mm-hmm.
what do you expect to have? You know what I mean? We got to hold people accountable above them because they can't.
Right.
Change, you know, it's a lot. It's a lot, man. And economic accountability is important too. That's why I said I wanted to donate tonight, because we got to understand we can do it on our own as well. You know.
Nah, thank you for bringing up that question,
Thank you.
Dion, and thank you, Mr. Hedrick, for that answer. I wanted to stay true to our end time. Our end time was 8 p.m. So as we just close out this discussion, I first want to thank you guys for taking the time out on a Friday night to really come here and engage in this wonderful discussion. Shout out to all the panelists, Anania, Jody, Dion, Katie. Thank you guys. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you guys for joining and really adding your insight. Thank you to everyone else who added their insight and their expertise as well. So I want to just close this out by giving Miss Angie Hitton, the president of the Northside NAACP, the last word. So Miss Angie.
So I just want to say, can you guys hear me? Yeah. I just want to say that I am incredibly proud of all of you and always motivated and inspired by your age group. I work with people that know me know I'm constantly working with people in the Gen Z age group. And I often say, like, literally, I had a group that I worked with through the whole quarantine, and you talk about resiliency, having to see them go from, you know, learning in classroom to being virtual, to many of them losing their prom and their graduation ceremonies, and all of the things that you guys have had to go through this past year. I always say, you know, life is tough, but you grow through struggle. And so I'm just like always happy and trying to learn from all of you because I think you are a lot less jaded than maybe even somebody my age is sometimes. And so I look to you guys to a lot of times be that light for me when, you know, things are kind of like dark and like I get a little hopeless. You guys always inspire me again and get me up in the morning because I really believe you guys are going to save this whole world. So that's a lot to put on your shoulders. But for tonight, I'll just say thank you guys so much. I tried not to talk because I do a lot of talking all the other times, but you guys really were amazing. So thank you.
Go ahead, Judge. You good?
Oh, I was just saying 1,000%. I mean,